No, it is. Let me take you back to the beginning of the session. Before it began, there was an issue called ABC sale of the state's liquor assets. Is that dead? Will that come back? I mean, the governor said prior to it not being voted on during the session that it would come back. But do you all get the impression that that's a dead issue now?
I think it might be for everybody but Bob McDonald. I know we talked about this car. Anita wanted to talk about this.
Well, it's just that I've written 7 million stories about this. He said it would come back, but he was careful to say that it may not be back next session, but maybe the session after, so you can take that for whatever that means. His point man at ABC recently left the governor's office, Eric Confiner, so they're doing some restructuring. I feel like he, we called it his biggest legislative defeat, and clearly it has been. But I feel like it would be even more of a defeat if he didn't bring it back at all. I feel like he has to bring it back, and he pledged to bring it back. I think he will. He has 2.5 more years, and I think he will in some fashion. But what that form takes, I don't know.
Well, it changed several times before it didn't come up.
And ultimately, to bring it back, I mean, I think, I agree with Anita. I think it's coming back, and I think when it comes back, I think you'll see them try to approach it in a different way. I mean, the administration tried. They went around the state and did umpteen zillion town halls, or they tried to really pump up the issue. And from my vantage point, I think they had a hard time getting the public revved up about the idea of privatizing ABC. And as the Democratic lawmakers are fond of saying, nobody's ever complained to them about having a hard time buying booze. And I think there's a little bit of truth in that argument, in the sense that that was one of the administration's sort of big challenges, was getting the average voter, the average person out there excited or at all interested in the idea of changes at the ABC system and how that would benefit, if you're the average Joe, how does that benefit me? How does it make my life better, cheaper, whatever? And I think there was somewhat of a disconnect. The administration tried to explain this complicated proposal, and I think they had a hard time translating that into political capital.
Well, and also with that, the constituents who didn't care when Bob McDonald talked about it also did not care enough to call their own delegates and senators about it. And, it's not going to help you get a delegate to care about something if nobody's calling them and yelling at them about it, right?
And I think that, the ironic thing is that it really didn't hurt McDonald much to lose because of this very issue. Probably a majority of Virginians were mildly interested in the idea that you could buy vodka at midnight at CVS, and then a smaller group of people who, for religious reasons or whatever, were really opposed, but they were in the minority. And so the fact that he lost didn't really hurt him. But that's not really what is going to motivate him to want to bring it back. It's just his personality is. He said he was going to do it. And by golly, he's going to do it. That's Bob McDonald. That's the way he was as a legislator. And so once he makes a decision, he's not easily going to let that go.
But he's going to have to find a way to do it while not reducing revenue through it and not opening a whole lot more liquor stores, because those were two things that people opposed.
And the way he did it was really, in the end, to avoid all of that, was kind of really just halfway, because the state was going to maintain wholesale control. So you could argue that's not really privatization, so what is the point of doing it at all?
But the one thing about this governor is he likes to, when he says he's going to do something, as you said, he likes to do it. So even if he waters it down and says he did it and gets it passed, he still did it. So
a watered-down liquor bill is still in our future. Let's look at the Washington Post poll, Anita, that your paper just did. I believe it put the governor's popularity at a rather sizable 63%. Was that?
62, actually. Yeah, he was.
Which makes him about the most popular governor in the United States of America right now.
It made him also the most popular elected official of those that we polled, and we polled most everyone in Virginia, which, for those keeping track, and the junior senator from Virginia is keeping track, more popular than Mark Warner, which is really quite unbelievable, because Mark Warner is an enormously popular politician and always has been. We polled it at 61, which is roughly the same. Yeah, 62%, really, really incredibly popular. Was way more popular than I thought he would come in. People in the polls said that they really credited him a lot on the economy and that the jobs thing that he's really talking about a lot, and that things were going roughly the right way. The direction of the state was going much more positively than the nation.
Let me change up and ask the last question before we turn it over to folks in the audience to do Q&A. Why is it that the makeup of the House of Delegates, in your opinion, is only 19% female, and why is it that only 8 of 40 Virginia state senators are women? What is it about Virginia that puts us in the traditional low spot on the state registry? I mean, it's not that much higher. The national average is a little over 23%, but we are in the bottom third of states with women in our legislature. Why do you think that might be? Does anyone have an idea?
We have to research this, Bob.
Adam's dying.
It's,
Do you know?
the only evidence I've heard is a study that, or 2 studies that have shown that women are much more prone to run if they are asked to run than men, who are prone to run without being asked. And there are plenty of men running who haven't been asked, I guess. 2 of the 8 women in the Virginia Senate have announced their retirement, so the number could dip possibly below the 8 of 40 in the Senate right now. Let's open this up to Q&A from the audience. We were planning to do it by written card, but I think this is a more intimate gathering than that. We do have a microphone that we can pass around in the audience.
Not everybody at once.
Testing, testing.
I'll do it if you leave it.
Can I pass this to you for audience participation?
I mentioned to my delegate a little while ago that a person I know very well who's lobbied the legislature for over 25 years told me today, actually told the group today, that he expects the House to have more than 70 Republicans come November. Would each of you mind making a prediction?
It's really hard to make that prediction. I mean, I know that the House guys did that math, and I know that they calculated how many seats they thought they could pick up with their redistricting map. But, I mean, everything is so, I mean, each district is different, and anything can change, and, I don't want to say the cliche that politics is local, but, the dynamics in each district and each race, they do change, and they vary depending on who's running. So I mean, in a vague general sense, I would expect them to lose seats. I wouldn't be surprised if they picked up a few more, but I wouldn't want to put a number on it.
I'm not sure I could guess the number, but I would say that some Republicans in leadership in the House feel like that if they get too many, then it becomes an unmanageable group of people. So not that, having a big majority is a bad thing, but, they're an unruly caucus even when they're smaller. And if you have 70 plus, I mean, the speaker has some trouble keeping them under control now. And so this speaker and the next speaker might give them pause possibly.
I'm sorry, I don't have a number, but I haven't heard that number, but that doesn't mean that's not the case. I would expect that they probably drew their map in mind, thinking that they would, well, I do know they drew the map in mind, keeping the Republicans keeping most of what they have, maybe even picking up a couple, but I don't know that I think it would be that much.
We'll continue the trend. I don't have a number for you. I think that's probably ballpark, somewhere around the right area. I mean, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that in some of these districts, you still don't have the full candidate field, and so I think that is sort of one of the variables that's still out there is that, you may have somebody who decide to retire that is going to be a shocker. I don't know. And you may have somebody decide to jump in the race that could completely upend a couple of these races. I think it's, still waiting to get a couple of those races fleshed out fully.
More interesting number may be the number of Democrats or Republicans in the Virginia Senate. which will be much closer to the majority either way, fair majority.